Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Abidemi, and today we are going to take a look at the concept of market demand and elasticity. In our previous classes, we have done the introduction to microeconomics, we've done the theory of consumer behavior, we've done individual demand, and today we are going to take a look at market demand and elasticity. What is market demand? Market demand is the sum of all the individual demands for a particular good or service. Understanding market demand is essential for businesses to thrive as it aligns their strategies with consumer preferences, economic conditions, and competitive landscape. The market demand curve is derived by summing up horizontally all the individual demand curves. Now, let's take a look at the market demand curve. Look at these three curves: individual 1, individual 2, and market demand, which is C. The summation of individual 1's quantity, which is 10, individual 2's quantity, which is 20, makes up the market demand, which is 30. Okay, individual 1's 10, individual 2, 20, and market demand curve is the summation 10 plus 20 equals to 30. Now, let's go straight into the concept of elasticity. Elasticity simply means responsiveness. It relates to how one economic variable, let's say quantity demanded or quantity supply, responds to a change in another economic variable, let's say price or income. Understanding elasticity helps policymakers, businesses, and consumers make informed decisions. For example, if a good has inelastic demand like cigarettes, a higher tax will raise substantial revenue without drastically reducing demand. What are the types of elasticity? We have price elasticity of demand, which we are going to denote in this study as PED. We have income elasticity of demand, which we are going to denote in this study as YED. We have cross elasticity of demand, which we are going to denote in this study as XED, and price elasticity of demand, price elasticity of supply, which we are going to denote as PES. All right, for this study, we're going to take a look at the first three types of elasticity: price, income, and cross. For price elasticity of supply, when we take a look at the theory of consumer behavior, we are going to take a look at a price elasticity of supply in much more detail. Now, let's take a look at price elasticity of demand. What is PED? Price elasticity of demand measures the degree of responsiveness of quantity demanded to a change in its price. Or I might simply ask you, how do you as a consumer respond when there's a change in the price of a particular product? Okay, this means to what degree does quantity demanded change as price changes? The formula for price elasticity of demand can be written as percentage change in quantity demanded divided by percentage change in price. Excuse me. In terms of interpretation, price elasticity of demand can be elastic, all right, which means greater than 1. So when we carry out the calculations, if the value you get is greater than 1, it means the demand for that good is elastic. Price elasticity of demand can be inelastic, which means less than 1. When you carry out your calculation and the value you get is less than 1, then that means the demand for that good is inelastic. Or price elasticity of demand can be unitary, which is equal to 1. Now, what is price elastic demand? When a 1% change in price leads to more than a 1% change in quantity demanded, it is called price elastic demand. In this case, consumers are very sensitive to price. For example, recreational goods such as vocational travel, leisure activities, which are, for example, tickets to concerts, luxury goods, and non-essential food items, tend to have elastic demand because consumers can easily reduce their consumption when prices rise. What about price inelastic demand? When a 1% change in price produces less than a 1% change in quantity demanded, it is called price inelastic demand. Necessities like gasoline and medical care usually have inelastic demand because people need them regardless of price changes. What about unit or unitary elastic demand? When a 1% change in price leads to an equal or proportionate change in quantity demanded, it is called unit or unitary elastic demand. Interpreting elasticities can be further presented in figure 4.2. So let's take a look at figure 4.2. Okay, so the first one is elastic. The second one is unit or unitary. And the third one is inelastic. For the first one, you could see that even when there's a little change in price, for example, price falls from P1 to P2, you can see the response is more. So in this case, consumers are very sensitive to price. In the second one, you can see that if, for example, if price falls from P1 to P2, you can see a proportionate response. Look at this. That's a proportionate response. The first one, which is elastic, you see the quantity demanded of that good is more. The response is more than the price. Okay. While in inelastic, you could see that when there's a when the price reduction, for example, is huge, is large, your response is small. The response to the change in price is very little, which means that consumers are not sensitive to price. Okay. Or their sensitivity to price is very low. Okay. So the first one, elastic, sensitive to price. Unitary, proportionate response. Inelastic, consumers are not sensitive to price, or their sensitivity to price is low. Now, in figure 4.2, A and C are relatively elastic and relatively inelastic. So in these figures that you see here, for example, let me clear this. A and C, these graphs are, the first one is relatively elastic and the second one is relatively inelastic. These 1 and 2. Okay. We can also have elasticity in extreme cases. And what are those extreme cases? We can have a perfectly elastic demand and perfectly inelastic demand. For perfectly elastic demand, this occurs when the quantity of a good does not change, even if the price changes. Okay, an example could be life-saving medication. In this case, consumers' price sensitivity is 0 and the curve is vertical. We can see that right here. Okay, so even if price increases from P1 to P2, your response does not change. Your response does not change. Okay, meaning your quantity remains the same. All right, and this is vertical. This is perfectly inelastic. All right, let's take a look at perfectly elastic. On the other hand, a perfectly elastic demand occurs when consumers are extremely sensitive to price changes, such that even a small increase in price causes the quantity demanded to drop to 0. In contrast, a small decrease in price causes an infinite increase in demand. In this case, the demand curve is horizontal, indicating that consumers will only buy the product at a specific price and no higher. This occurs when there is so many perfect substitutes. In markets where products are identical and substitutes are easily available, consumers have no reason to pay a high price, and when they can easily switch a competitor offering the same product at a lower price. In this case, you see consumers' price sensitivity is extreme. So those are the two extreme cases. One extreme case is perfectly inelastic demand. Another extreme case is perfectly elastic demand. For perfectly inelastic demand, the value is PED equals to 0. For a perfectly elastic demand, the PED equals infinity. Okay, you see it here, right here. In elastic, PED equals 0, right here, and elastic, PED equals infinity. All right, let's go on. So this is the graph. Here you can see that price remains the same while quantity keeps increasing. Okay, price does not change. All right, quantity keeps increasing. All right, now let us go to measuring and calculating price elasticity of demand. Measuring and calculating price elasticity of demand. Price elasticity of demand can be measured over a price range called arc elasticity right here. Or at one point called point elasticity. Point elasticity is used when there are extremely small changes. Arc elasticity is used when there is a more substantial change. Arc elasticity of demand measures elasticity between 2 points on a curve using a midpoint between the two curves. This is called the midpoint formula. Okay, so let's investigate the price elasticity of demand using the midpoint formula. So if quantity decreases from Q1 to Q2, so 240 to 160, quantity decreases, and price increases from 90 to 110. Of course, that is the law of demand. If price increases, quantity decreases. All right. So how do we find price elasticity of demand using midpoint? First of all, you had Q1 plus Q2 divided by 2. That's what you have here. Yeah. You also had P1 plus P2 divided by 2. P1 plus P2 divided by 2. That is what you have here. What are the values you have? You're going to have 200. And the other value, you're going to have 100. Okay, first of all, for the midpoint formula, you need to first find the midpoint for quantity and midpoint for price. What is the midpoint for quantity? Just had Q1 plus Q2 divided by 2. What is the midpoint for price? Just had P1 plus P2 and divided by 2. So you're going to have, these are your midpoints here. Okay, so now, let's now find, you remember the formula for price elasticity of demand, which is percentage change in quantity demanded divided by percentage change in price. So let us find the percentage change in quantity demanded. It will be Q2 minus Q1 divided by the midpoint. For percentage change in price, it will be P2 minus P1 divided by the midpoint. You can see that here, Q2 minus Q1 divided by the midpoint, okay, which is 200. And P2 minus P1, 110 minus 90, you see it here, 110 minus 90 divided by 100, which is the midpoint here. Here you're going to have 0.2 multiplied by 100. You're going to have minus 0.4 multiplied by 100. So the values you have is minus 40 for percentage in the quantity demanded and 20 for percentage change in price. Right? So you see price elasticity of demand equals minus 40 divided by 20 equals minus 2, which is equal to 2. In price elasticity of demand, we take out the negative. We take out the negative because economists assume that there is already a negative relationship between price and quantity demanded. Okay, you know the law of demand. As you increase price, quantity falls. As you reduce price, quantity increases. All right, so that's a negative relationship. We usually say the demand covers a negative slope. So the relationship between price of a good and the demand of a good is negative already. So for you to now have negative, that negative is going to take out the negative. So you're going to have 2. And 2 is greater than 1. It shows that that good is price elastic. Okay, what that means is that consumers are sensitive to price. Okay, when a good is price elastic, consumers are sensitive to price. When a good is price inelastic, consumers are either their sensitivity to price is low or they are not sensitive to price, depending on the degree of inelasticity. Okay, so let me read the reason. I put some explanations here. The minus sign is removed in elasticity, specifically to price elasticity of demand. When we do income elasticity, minus has a meaning. When we do cross elasticity, minus also has a meaning. The minus is removed in elasticity to focus on the magnitude of the response and to simplify interpretation, given that the inverse relationship between price and quantity is already understood. This practice allows for easier comparison and avoids unnecessary complexity in the presentation of elasticity data. Okay. Now, for extremely small changes, let's take a look at the calculation for point elasticity. Of course, now we are going to use, so we don't need to find the midpoint. What do we need to do? 300 minus 200 divided by 200. Whatever value that you have, you multiply by 100. For price, 3 minus 4, okay, divided by 4. Whatever value that you have, you multiply by 100. So you would see 50 divided by 25, minus 25. Here you're also going to have minus 2, which is 2, which is price elastic. Okay? Now, let's take a look at income elasticity of demand. So for income elasticity of demand, we are also taking a look at to what degree do you respond, okay, to a particular good when there's a change in your real income. To what degree will a consumer respond to a particular good when there's a change in real income? Okay, real income means how much money that is made available for you to spend. All right. We've already talked about inferior goods and normal goods. For inferior goods, as your income increases, your consumption falls. That's for inferior goods. For normal good, as your income increases, your consumption increases. Now, what are the types of income elasticity of demand? You have positive income elasticity of demand. Okay, elasticity of demand greater than 0. As income increases, the quantity demanded of a product also increases, all other factors remaining constant. This is for normal goods. You see that right here. Let's take a look at that here. Let's see. Let me use my disappearing ink. You can see here, as your income increases, quantity that you consume also increase. Okay. So let's take a look at negative income elasticity of demand, less than 0. Okay. As income increases, the quantity demanded of a product decreases, all other factors remaining constant. You can see the graph right here. Right here. You can see as your income rises from Y1 to Y2, the quantity demanded of good X falls. Okay, and this is for inferior goods, which we just explained. You also have zero income elasticity of demand. As income increases, the quantity demanded of a product does not change. Okay, you see it right here. Y1, Y2, you still consume the same quantity, even if your income increases. All right? Income elasticity of demand can also be elastic or inelastic. If it's greater than 1, that means um, if it's greater than 1, then the demand for that good when your income changes is elastic. If it's less than 1, the demand for that good is inelastic. All right. So for cross elasticity of demand, let's take a look at that. Cross elasticity of demand measures the responsiveness of demand for a good towards the change in the price of a related good. Okay, so for cross elasticity of demand, we are asking the question, how would you respond in consuming a particular good as a result of a change in the price of another good? How would you respond to the demand in terms of consumption for a particular good as a result in the change in price of another good? Okay, that good could be complement or that good could be substitute. Okay, so related goods are of two kinds, substitute and complementary goods. In the case the two goods are not related, the coefficient of cross elasticity is 0. Okay, in the case the two goods are substitutes for each other, like tea and coffee, the cost price elasticity will be positive. That is, if the price of coffee increases, the demand for tea increases. Okay, if you increase the price of one, then the demand for the other increases. On the other hand, in case the goods are complementary in nature, like pen and ink, then the cross elasticity will be negative. The demand for ink will decrease if prices of pen increase. The demand for ink will decrease if the prices of pen increase, and vice versa. Okay? All right. Now, let's take a look at the calculation of, so the formula is percentage change in the quantity demanded of good X divided by percentage change in the price of good Y. All right, so how do we calculate it? For example, if the price of a computer games console, good B, falls from 500 pounds to 400 pounds. As a result, sales of games good A increase from sales of games good A increased from 50,000 to 70,000. Of course, from this question, you should know that these two goods are complementary goods. Okay, computer games console and the sales of games, they are complementary. Okay, so that's why the price of computer game console falls from 500 pounds to 400 pounds. People are going to buy more. Okay, people are going to be able to purchase more games. Okay, why? Because it means that maybe they'll be able to buy more console. Okay, and so they'll be able to buy more games. All right, so let's take a look at the cross elasticity of demand. So just the same way we did the point formula, not the midpoint formula, the point formula. How do we arrive at our results? Okay, so I've split it here into Q1 and Q2, Q1, Q2, P1, P2. Okay, so what do you do for percentage change in quantity demanded? For good, good A, okay, that's 70,000 minus 50,000 divided by 50,000 multiplied by 100. You're going to have 40%, right? That is Q2 minus Q1 divided by 50,000. Whatever value that you have, you multiply it by 100, you have 40%. What about for price? For price, P1, so 400 minus 500, that will give us 100 divided by 500, multiplied by 100. You're going to have, you see, minus 100 divided by 100, you're going to have minus 20. So cross elasticity of demand is 40 divided by minus 20 equals minus 2. Remember that I told you that in price elasticity of demand, we take out the sign. But we need signs in income elasticity of demand. We need signs in cross elasticity of demand. And for cross elasticity of demand, this sign shows that those two goods are complementary. Take a look at it here. Take a look at it here. In case the two goods, on the other hand, in case the two goods are complementary, in nature like pen and ink, the cross elasticity of uh, the cross elasticity will be negative. The cross elasticity will be negative right here. Okay, and I cited an example. The demand for ink will decrease if the prices of pen increases, and vice versa. Okay, so the answer here shows that the two goods, all right, are complementary goods, are complementary goods. So a quick one with the price elasticity of supply. A price elasticity of supply measures the responsiveness of quantity supplied to a change in price. It is necessary for a firm to know how quickly and effectively it can respond to changing market conditions, especially price changes. We will discuss the concept of supply and elasticity of supply in the second section. That's when we start to talk about the theory of producer behavior. The following equation can be used to calculate price elasticity of supply. Percentage change in quantity supplied divided by percentage change in price. Now, what is the relationship between total revenue and elasticity? The total revenue from the sale of a good equals the price of the good multiplied by the quantity, which is P times Q. When price changes, total revenue also changes. However, a cut in the price does not always decrease total revenue. The change in total revenue depends on the elasticity of demand in the following ways. If you know the price elasticity of demand, you know what will happen to total revenue when the price changes. When demand is price inelastic, okay, price inelastic simply means consumers are not sensitive to price. Okay, a price decrease reduces total revenue. Of course, if consumers are not sensitive to price and a firm reduces its price, the change will not be much. And so that firm might make a loss. So for a firm to make a loss, for example, for a firm to make a profit, for example, or for total revenue to increase, a good that is price inelastic, a price increase will increase its total revenue. A good that is price inelastic. Okay, so when demand is price elastic, of course, we know that consumers are very sensitive to price. All right, for when a good is price elastic, and therefore, at the slightest price decrease, you will still have more consumers buying or more individuals buying that good, and so a price decrease increases total revenue. Okay. In the borderline, a case of unit elastic demand, a price decrease leads to no change in total revenue. A price decrease leads to no change in total revenue. Okay. So let me take a recap before we go to the review questions. You know what market demand is? You know what elasticity is, which shows degree of responsiveness. You know the type of elasticity, price elasticity of demand, income elasticity of demand, cross elasticity of demand, and price elasticity of supply. You know price elasticity of demand. You know the formula, percentage change in quantity demanded divided by percentage change in price. You know how to interpret elasticity. Elasticity can be greater than 1, less than 1, or equal to 1. If it's greater than 1, price elasticity of demand is elastic. If it's less than 1, price elasticity of demand is inelastic. If it's equal to 1, price elasticity of demand is unitary. Okay, and I also said that we can also have extreme cases. We can have, so these are the graphs, elastic, unit, and inelastic. These A and C, I said they are relative. A is relative elastic demand and relative price elastic demand, and C is relative price inelastic demand. I also mentioned that you can also have extreme cases, perfectly price elastic demand, okay, perfectly elastic demand, and perfectly inelastic demand. For perfectly elastic demand, price elasticity of demand equals infinity, okay? For perfectly inelastic demand, price elasticity of demand equals to 0. For perfectly inelastic, it shows that no matter how the price changes, quantity remains the same, okay? For perfectly elastic, it shows that price remains the same while quantity changes to infinity. How do you measure price elasticity of demand? You can measure it from two angles, arc elasticity or point elasticity. Arc elasticity measures substantial changes. Point elasticity measures small changes. For arc elasticity, what formula do we use when there is substantial changes? We use the midpoint formula. And for point elasticity, small changes, we use the point formula. Okay? So for the midpoint formula, I said what we need to do first is to find the midpoint for quantity and price, and then use the percentage change in quantity demanded divided by percentage change in price. Okay, so I said in price elasticity of demand, the minus sign is removed. Why do we remove it? Because we already know the law of demand. Because we already know in demand, law of demand, the relationship between price and quantity is negative. The relationship between price and quantity is negative. Okay, so for point formula, okay, small changes, Q2 minus Q1 divided by Q1, P2 minus P1 divided by P1. Whatever answers that you have for Q, you multiply by 100. Whatever answers that you have for P, you multiply by 100 and divide it, all right? For income elasticity of demand, I told you that what is income elasticity of demand? The degree at which you respond to a change in a particular good as a result of your change in income. So if your income increases and the demand for a good also increases, then we say that is a normal good. If your income increases and the demand for that good falls, that is an inferior good. I also mentioned that income elasticity of demand, YED, can be elastic or inelastic. For income elasticity of demand, is great when it's greater than 1, we say the income elasticity for that good is elastic. If it's less than 1, the income elasticity of demand is inelastic. Okay, so greater than 1, elastic; less than 1, inelastic. So what are the types of income elasticity of demand? A positive income elasticity of demand greater than 0. Okay, this is the graph. Negative income elasticity of demand less than 0. Okay, and 0 income elasticity of demand. Even if your income changes, the demand for that good, the quantity remains the same. It doesn't change. Okay, and for cross elasticity of demand, we are taking a look at the degree of responsiveness of a demand for a good towards the change in price of another good. Okay, so the goods could be related or not related. If they are not related, the coefficient of crop elasticity is 0. If they are related, there could be substitute or complement. For complement, the cross elasticity is negative. Okay, for complement. For substitute, the cross elasticity is positive. Okay, and these are the calculations here. And price elasticity of supply measures responsiveness of quantity supplied to a change in price. We're going to take a look at that in the theory of producer behavior. And the formula is percentage change in quantity supplied divided by percentage change in price. What's the relationship between total revenue and elasticity? When a good is price inelastic, okay? When a good is price inelastic, a price decrease does not increase total revenue, okay? For that firm to increase its total revenue, then they might need to increase the price. Okay, when demand is price elastic, a price decrease increases total revenue. Why? Because just a small change in price will enable people to consume more of that good. That's when there's a reduction in price. And in the borderline case of unit elastic demand, the price decrease on increase leads to no change in total revenue. So, what are the review questions? What is market demand? Explain each concept of elasticity as discussed. Also know how to calculate each type of elasticity. If P1 increases from 135 to 165 and Q1 reduces from 86 to 74, calculate the price elasticity of demand using the midpoint formula. If P rises by 10% and Q falls by 15%, what is the price elasticity of demand? By just taking a look at this question, if P rises by 10% and Q falls by 15%, of course, you know that your answer will be elastic. Okay, whatever value, you know that good is price elastic because the response is more than the change in price. For 5, suppose a 10% decrease in the price of digital camera led to 10% increase in quantity demanded. Then price elasticity of demand will be unitary, 10-10, proportionate response. Number 6, suppose a 20% increase in the price of salt led to no change in the quantity demanded, then price elasticity of demand will be, so 20% increase in the price of salt led to no change in the quantity demanded. Okay, consumers are not price sensitive, or the price sensitivity is 0. You know your answer will be 0, which is perfectly inelastic. Perfectly inelastic. Suppose a 100% increase in the price of oil lead to a 30% fall. Of course, you know what it is? It is relatively inelastic. Okay. Suppose a 5% decrease in the price of packaged holiday to Florida led to 20% increase in quantity demanded. Then PED will be, of course, you know, the response 20% is more than the 5%. A 5% increase in real income leads to 25% increase in demand. Income elasticity of demand will be, so a 5% increase in real income leads to 25% increase. You know, that's for normal good. A 10% increase in real income causes 2% decrease in demand. You know, that's an inferior good. Okay, inferior good will give you will be negative. Okay, normal goods is positive. So we get normal goods, positive. If we get negative, that is inferior good. And these are the references. All right. I hope this is quite explanatory enough. All right. So I'm going to see you in our next chapter, where we are going to talk about risk, uncertainty, and choice. Okay. We're going to take a look at, as a consumer or an individual, are you risk averse? Are you risk neutral? Or are you risk loving? Okay. All right. So please feel free to subscribe to my YouTube channel, and this has helped you, or you have questions, you can put the questions in my comment section. All right. And I'll be happy to respond to it. All right. Do have a wonderful day. Thank you.